But do note, and if you're online, the sermon notes are there on our website. They're also going to be on Facebook for you. At the top of all the sermon notes, y'all, who, if you've been coming for a while, you know, there's a section of Scripture for you to read every day of the week. The goal always, is for me not to get through every ounce of information I've put on here. My goal is to introduce you to the material and for you to go home and study it as part of your devotionals during the week. All of these topics I'd like to think are important. When we're talking about God's stuff, it's more stuff than you can cover in a sermon on Sunday morning. So anyway, if you ever have questions, let me know. One final thing. When we get to the end of this month, which is in 2 weeks, we're going to have Ash Wednesday. And I just want you, for all of us, to at least ponder the idea of taking Lent seriously this year in terms of we're going to start Lent with a fast. And what we're talking about is a Daniel fast. What a Daniel fast is you can eat anything basically that's not cooked. So fruits, vegetables. Typically you don't eat, raw steak for the Daniel fast. But, if you need it, then go for it. But the idea is fruits, vegetables, juices that don't have any added sugar or anything, and nuts. And we'll start that Wednesday morning. We're not going to start it Thursday. Start that Wednesday morning. And we're going to do that through Sunday morning. We break the fast, so you should have a great, big, old, awesome breakfast on Sunday morning, March 1st. And then we're going to hopefully work through a devotional book for the 40 days before Lent. And then we're going to also have a fast the whole week of Holy Week. Those of you who are up for it, we can do this. You're asking me, why would anybody be dumb enough to do such a dumb thing? It is an important question. Why would we do that? A lot of people give up something for Lent, and I ask them, why are you giving something up? And they're like, it's just because what we do. I'm like, why? Why would we do this? Well, one of the things, and today's going to be one of the sermons leading up to this, and we'll start a new series here in 3 weeks. Whenever you hunger for whatever it is that you gave up, or when we fast, believe me, when you eat fruits and vegetables, raw fruits, you're not allowed to cook anything, you will get hungry. Even though you're just as full as you think you can be, you're still starving. If you're doing this because you love Christ, that hunger, as part of our message, will remind us that only Jesus is bread of life. The hunger we have from the world, you fill it up, tomorrow you're always going to be hungry again. Always going to be hungry again. And we must learn as Christians who live in a hungry world, a ravenous world. We need to learn how to live full. And I'm finding we don't know how to do this. We don't know. So we, the church, should know. So that's part of what we're doing here. The other part of that is, as we're going to have a healthy diet for all 40 days, and we're going to start healthy, we're going to end healthy, I really want to encourage you to buy your own devotional book. There are so many on Amazon. I was going to pick a few, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that this year. Go on Amazon and just do 40-day devotional. And literally, you'll get 10, 20, 30, 40 of them. You can have devotional books for teens. You can have devotional books for women. You can have devotional books for married people. You can have devotional books for leaders. It's just everything. So go through there and find something that speaks to you. And it should be a 40-day study, and your first devotional is going to be the morning of Ash Wednesday. Make sense? You have 40 days, you'll be done on Easter, and hopefully we'll all have our own, in a sense, devotional that just spoke to us for this particular season. And finally, as we're moving towards all this, I would also encourage you, if you can't come to the Ash Wednesday service, if you're at home, watch it online. Matter of fact, if y'all are willing to do this, I'd rather you stay home and invite some neighbors. Consider having a barbecue. Wait, you can't, you're fasting. Have a lot of nuts. No, I did it. You can have, what is fat? I forgot, I did mean to say this. Fat Tuesday is the Tuesday before Lent starts. Typically, people do have, that's what the Mardi Gras thing is about. Well, it's not really about that, but it should be. The idea is that you would have, and I would encourage you to think about this, have a feast on Tuesday night. If you have kids, man, what a great way to teach them about have a big old feast on Tuesday night. Why are we having this? Because Lent starts tomorrow, and tomorrow you're only going to get nuts for lunch, you know? When you wake up, so you have the big feast. Wednesday, you start your fast. Keep fasting until Sunday. Wednesday, you start your devotional. Then we're going to work through Lent. We're going to actually have a Seder meal this year on Monday, Thursday. With what? What's the point? What's the point? Traditions have no point unless they're connecting you to Christ. So the point is that if we are all this intentional about connecting to Christ through the Lenten season, you do these things not because you're supposed to, but because you want to. I guarantee you, you mark my words, every now and then I'm actually right about something. You will feel better, you will feel closer to Jesus, you will feel healthier when we get to Easter this year than you would if you went about your business as if nothing changed, you didn't do anything over this 4-day period. Lent is one of those great times of the Christian year that Christians have really looked at this season for thousands of years now. It's one of the best times to connect with Christ through this idea of dedicated prayer, which is our devotional time, dedicated fasting, and thinking carefully about Jesus who gave his life for you and me on the cross and not taking that for granted. So I'll email a little bit more about that to you, but hopefully that's the gist. Remember, you'll have to buy your devotional book before Ash Wednesday. Of course, with Amazon, you'll get it tomorrow, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But anyway, I'm going to do it myself. I feel like it's time for me, and I think all of us will benefit from this. So I would encourage you to join me in a holy fast, in a holy Lent, so that this year, for those 40 days, you're practicing as authentic Christianity as you know how to practice. We'll get into that more a little bit through emails and that kind of stuff, but that's the gist of where we're going. One of the reasons that I feel like we need this, in today's sermon, we're kind of in between series. We wrapped up, if you didn't make all the Finding Calm and the Chaos series, all those are online. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about covetousness and contentment. Next week I want to talk a little bit about contentment. Then we're going to totally shift gears and study Jeremiah for a bit for the season of Lent this year. But as I was thinking about it this week, and I was thinking about, okay, where do we have struggles in life where yet again we're doing things that we think are healthy, we're doing things that we don't think are wrong, and yet it goes so contrary to the gospel, and we don't have any awareness of that. One of those places in my own life, and I'll give you an example in a little bit, is this idea of covetousness. Covetousness. So I want to ask you, all of you, before I give you my answers, in your own head, can you define what is covetousness? Do you have awareness when you covet? And do you have a reason why it's wrong? I hope I asked those questions right. Also, do you know what covetous is in the first place? Covetousness. Do you have awareness when you covet? And do you have some rationale as to why it's wrong? I was struck this week. How we don't think about some of these things, and yet again, this is yet another one of those mature Christian principles where, if you've been coming for a while, you kind of know we talk about the basics of Christianity. You have a holy Sabbath, you have a daily devotional, you tithe and get your money right with God, you serve the poor, and those things are pretty easy to check off the list. But that is such baby Christianity. It's not an insult. It just means that's just kind of where you start. Well, what's next? A lot of what we're working on when we went on the retreat, we'll roll this out when we're ready. We're still working on it. We're wrestling with it. What does it look like to be a mature disciple of Jesus, and how do we get there depending on where you are on that discipleship pathway? We're working hard on that. But one thing I do know is that once you get past the basics, where you're not fighting God every single week to have a devotional, you're not fighting God to actually tithe, you're not fighting God to actually make Sabbath holy, or to serve, you embrace these things. It's just, this is our rhythm of grace. This is a rhythm of life for our family. We don't fight these things. We embrace them. We look forward to Sundays being off as a family. you know? Anyway, well, what's next? Well, all the hard stuff, like forgiving people who hurt you, like being grateful in all circumstances, like rejoicing always, like praying without ceasing. And here's another one, like not coveting. Not coveting. What is coveting? It goes something like this. Coveting is unhealthy desire for something you shouldn't have. It's that simple. And yet it's that complicated. Unhealthy desire. Desire is a feeling. Everyone who's ever tried to follow Jesus any amount of time knows that we have problems with our feelings when it comes to following Christ. So often in life, don't y'all know this is true? We hear this, I don't feel like going to church today. I don't feel like going to work today. Lucky for me, I don't ever have to work. So, but for the rest of you, it's like you don't feel like taking out the trash. I don't feel like taking a bath. I don't feel like getting a haircut. I don't feel like, it goes on and on. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like eating a salad. I don't feel like doing all kinds of things. And one of the struggles we have with children, especially young ones, and the more immature they are, the more problems we have with this, is they're like, well, I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like eating broccoli or Brussels sprouts. And we somehow, as adults, have to help them understand that their feelings are wrong. That what they feel is bad for them. That they can't live their lives based off their feelings, because if they do, they're literally going to feel themselves right off a cliff and crash on the rocks below. So many people make terrible decisions. Terrible decisions. Follow me here. Because they feel like it was a good idea. I feel like this is a good idea. Well, modern society and the American economy and coveting. Some of y'all know I've done a little bit of work in the business world, studying this or that, and marketing, which is not my specialty, but I've learned enough to be dangerous. One of the things they teach you in Business Marketing 101 is if you want to be a good marketer, you have to create an itch. You have to create an itch, and if you're really good at it, it's going to itch a lot. You ever get chiggers? Oh, I hate chiggers. South Alabama, all you do is walk outside and you come back, and the next day, it's like you got this big whelp, and you scratch and scratch and scratch, and that doesn't help at all. And it just itches forever if you don't kill the thing. Anyway, they're kind of disgusting. I was thinking about showing you a picture, and I'm like, no, everybody might just leave. So anyway, just imagine. But anyway, the best marketers are like chiggers. They're trying to get under your skin to create an itch that you can't get rid of until you not only scratch it, but you treat it by buying whatever they're selling. I wrote it down like this. Making people feel itchy is the point of good marketing. Then scratching the itch with your product or service. Every time your prospective customers encounter your marketing, they should feel itchier and itchier until finally they scratch it by buying the product or service you offer. That's good marketing. Now, this goes way deeper than that, but what I want you to at least go home and ponder. No, I don't have a Bible verse to support this, so you got to use your brain and think. If it is true that our American economy is driven in a large sense by getting people to buy things they don't need, but if we stop doing that, then we are going to go into recession. Right? Getting everybody to spend more every year than the year before, because as soon as we don't, it's recession. If people all stop doing that, that's depression. I mean, all a recession is we spent less as a people this year than last year. This whole coronavirus thingy has the stock market kind of going up and down, because what they're wondering is, are all these billions of Chinese people going to stop buying as much stuff because they're afraid to go out and spend money because they're afraid of getting sick. And not just them, but what if that happens over here and we're afraid to go out in public? I mean, it's just this big butterfly effect. But the point is this. Every one of us, and you talk about blind spots, and me too. I've really tried to figure this out this week, and then I figured out I just don't get it, but I'm at least on track. We have been raised since the day we were born with this idea that it is not only fine, but it's healthy and important for us to be in an economy that thrives on creating desires that must be fulfilled regardless of how necessary they are. All of you need to desire things you don't want so the economy and our retirements all get better. I got an example of this from one of the Super Bowl commercials. Think about this. What's the itch that this commercial is trying to create so that we'll go scratch? Let's show this real quick.
What does home mean to me? It's my sanctuary. It's the one place I can let my guard down. It's where I can just kick back and be totally comfortable in my own skin. You know what I'm saying? Rocket Mortgage understands that home is where I can be myself. And that feels pretty darn good. Oh.
Home is where you feel the most comfortable, and Rocket Mortgage helps you feel comfortable financing that home with a personalized and convenient experience centered around you. Rocket Mortgage. Push button, get mortgage.
You got this.
Take it.
Okay, all right.
All right. So, brilliant commercial, but if you go home and think about it, he's saying, I'm not comfortable in my own skin out in the world. How many of us? One of the things that really pushes so many of us to dress a certain way and make certain expenditures and do certain things is we watch these commercials, we see the Super Bowl halftime shows. Man, I'm not even going to comment on that because I could, but anyway, and we're like, well, I'm supposed to be like that. I mean, how many young ladies in our world today look at the J-Los and kind of stuff, and they're like, well, I need to dress like that, I need to look like that, and we spend all this money because they're not comfortable in their own skin. So this is a really deep, it is a really profound problem with human nature that they are identifying, because we can all identify with that. I'm not comfortable in my own skin out in the world. So I come home to my sanctuary where I can, be myself. And yet if you think carefully about what the advertisement's saying is, but you're probably not comfortable there either, but you would be if you got a new house. And most of us aren't. When we got a 50% divorce rate and the other 50%, we all know, y'all aren't all happy either. So how many people are not happy in their own homes? A lot. I will tell you, I have literally seen it where couples came into me for marriage counseling and we had conversations about spiritual issues, and their answer was, well, we're going to get another house because that's going to help. Sometimes they say, we're going to have kids, and that's going to help. And I'm like, whoa! Like, do you hear yourself? You're going to go spend more money and have children, and that's going to fix this? Yep. No. So the itch, and the better commercials really get down to the itch of human nature, the deeper issues that none of us really want to talk about, but it's so much better to just say, you know what, if I just write a check for a new house and we go there, everything's going to be fixed. Is it? When's the last time you ever got anything new that fixed what was going on inside of you? Who can name the Christmas presents you got 2 years ago that are still making a difference in your life today? How about 5 years ago? Interesting study. Part of this sermon, I've got to give credit to Adam Hamilton. He had some good thoughts on this, but he was talking about they did huge studies on toys and children and how they gave, y'all, well, you think this through. If you have a subset of, say, 12 kids, and you put them in a room with 50 toys, and you take the same kids and put them in a room with 4 toys, which group is going to be happier? Hands down, not even close, the ones with 4. Why is that? Because more is not better. Ever. Sometimes more can make your life more chaotic. Sometimes more can make life more confusing. Sometimes more can just be more. And so in the midst of this world, it tells us more is better, upgrade is better, and new is better, and they're going to make you happier. We have this verse from Psalm 37 verse 4, where God tells us, if you ever want the desires of your heart filled, you're going to have to delight yourself in the Lord. If you ever want the desires of your heart filled, you're going to have to delight yourself in the Lord. This word, desires, is where I'm going to focus today. In fact, let's just stop a second. Read it yourself. Do you believe this? Because what the world tells us is this isn't true. If you want the desires of your heart filled, you need to work harder. You need to be more successful. You need to have more money in the bank account. You need to marry the right people. You need to have the right kids. You need to live in the right house. You put all of your circumstances in order, and that's how your desires are filled. Right? Our desires always relate to circumstances, don't they? The desire of my heart is to have a new car and a new house and a better upgrade over my spouse, and, on and on we go. And when I get my circumstances correct, where the desires of my heart that always relate externally, then I'm going to be happy. And yet, how many of us have changed our circumstances? We've got the better house. Some people have gotten the better spouse, By the way, if you get divorced once, did you know your chances for getting a divorce go up by another 50%? And by the time you get to your third marriage, you got like a less than 1 in 10 shot of staying married. Desire. Boy, this really struck me this week. Back in Genesis, we won't turn to it, but I'll just talk about it. We have this idea of Eden, and I want you to see this. Eden and hedonism. I know it's an O, but this idea of hedonism is the idea that you, through pleasure and through fulfilling things that you want in this world, by literally following all of your desires to their conclusion, that you will find joy and happiness and satisfaction in life. Hedonism is the idea of you do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, and at some point that is going to satisfy. Eden, as in the Garden of Eden. Eden, that word, its root is also desire. As in God had created everything. And everything that God created in the Garden of Eden fulfilled the desires of Adam and Eve. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the apple in and of themselves were not evil, were they? But what made it evil for Eve and Adam to eat the apple? Boy, this is a big question. I'll keep this up, Melissa, but this is a big question. The apple wasn't evil. It was an apple. It's just an apple. What made it evil, sinful for Adam and Eve? Everything God created was good in its rightful place. The difference between the apple being good or being bad was the difference between hedonism and Eden in the first place. Eve saw the apple, she desired it, knowing it wasn't right for her. She knew God's will, she knew what God asked, and what did she do anyway? Yep. Can you define the difference for me in your own life of when you have a healthy desire for something that you don't have, and when that becomes, here we go, covetousness? Do you have the self-awareness to even know when you are coveting? For most of us, I think the answer is no, we don't. I struggle with it this week. I mean, I struggle with it every day. You do too. None of us are above this. We're just so arrogant as to think it doesn't apply to us. That's the problem. Me too. So I'm just, I'm going about my business. I've had my devotion. I had a pretty good week with Jesus, and I'm, thinking, here I am. And we just got Disney Plus a month or two ago. Y'all know about Disney Plus? Well, the one thing I find with Disney Plus with our TV is that the sound is about 50% less than Netflix and Amazon Prime. Y'all have this problem? Yeah, okay, so I'm a problem solver. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, and the other thing that we've done a couple times now is, so we turn our volume up to about 55, which normally we listen to at 17, and then we forget. Yeah, and then Gladys comes in, turns on the TV, it's like, ah! The dog screaming and Scott's crying, and so I'm like, I'm done with this, I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to buy me a soundbar. Right? Obviously, this is the fix. And so, many of you who know me, I'm going to look at every soundbar, and I'm going through everything, and I go through CNET and the top soundbars, and the top soundbar was only $2,500. I desired that. They have this thing called Atmos Sound, where you get a soundbar, it bounces off the ceiling, all this stuff. Just in case you're wondering, I don't have $2,500. Just to be clear with that, to spend on this. But man, I wanted it. I burned for that thing. I got on eBay looking for it used. I got on Amazon. I found it $1,800. What a deal. I'm saving $700 by buying this thing. And then I got to thinking, is this God's will for my life, for my money? Oh, wait, for God's money? I would have to go into debt to buy that soundbar. I could do it. I could afford it. With credit cards, of course. That feeling. Y'all know what I'm talking about? I really wanted it. I longed for it. I burned for it. And part of me just said, this is wrong. It might not be wrong for you, but it's wrong for me. And I literally caught myself. I actually put the thing in my Amazon cart. That's how close I was. And I went to it, and I'm like, no. And I canceled it, and I walked away. And I felt just this burning desire for it. And I took a deep breath. I walked away. And I actually said, God, your will be done. Which we both know is to get that soundbar. But that's right. Came back to it. That desire, that feeling had subsided. Did a little more research, and $99 later, I got a Vizio soundbar from Walmart that's the #1 rated cheap soundbar in the world today. Coming in this week, I'll tell you how it goes. The reason I tell you that story is because we do this everywhere. There are times, believe it or not, when me and Gladys fight. Imagine that. Well, not really. She fights because I'm a rude person. She's just defending herself. She's perfect. Wherever she's in California. Oh, I could talk all about her because she's not here. Anyway, yeah, there are times, and let's just be really clear. If you've been married more than a week, you know what I'm talking about, where you're disagreeing, you're struggling, you think, certainly there's a better soundbar out there. Nobody has a job that you go to week in and week out that at some point you don't say, really? And you don't start burning for something better. We watch commercials about houses, about cars. It's everywhere. Let me just read to you the 10th commandment. Don't even look it up. I just want you to listen carefully. Because a lot of times we think coveting is about stuff. That is not what the 10th commandment says. Do not, and I love the Common English translation. Y'all know the old King James, thou shalt not covet. Okay. Do not desire your neighbor's house. Do not desire your neighbor's wife. Do not desire anything that belongs to your neighbor. Oh, and that's it. Period. What? Have y'all ever noticed that when you act on ungodly desires, it never satisfies? If you haven't noticed, start putting on your pay attention button. There's a reason why. There is a reason why when we do things out of God's will that we convince ourselves, well, maybe it is God's will, or, I can afford it, or, if I did that, it'd be much worse, so I'll do this one. Whether it's adultery or pornography or spending money you don't have, living above your means, whatever it is, from the worst of the worst down to the little stuff. Every single time we do stuff out of God's will where we have these desires thinking, it's no big deal, or I know it's a big deal, but it's way better than that. You never come out the other side satisfied with it. Ever. Y'all know why this is? Because you can't have true pleasure. The desires of your heart can never be filled if your heart is being corrupted along the way. You can't engage in another relationship if you're cheating on this one, because the guilt and the corruption and the pollution that gets in your heart along the way is going to ruin it. You just can't get past that. There are desires that are Eden and healthy, and there are desires that are hedonistic that will ruin you. And we must be able to tell the difference, because the world is not going to tell you when they're different. Who is going to be your filter? Just you and the Holy Spirit. That is exactly right. Another reason we need to walk with the Lord daily is not simply because I need to have a deep breath and calm and peace. That is true. But part of it is as we navigate the given day, and whether it's a Disney Plus soundbar or whatever, we have to be able to have a sound enough mind, right, and a sound enough spirit that when these unhealthy feelings start getting into our hearts, that we can go, wait a minute, that is not of God. When our spouse said something, does something, and we start getting these unhealthy desires, that is not of God. What is of God? Well, I'm ending this way. We'll just give you a couple quick points, but I'll tell you this for sure. We know this is of God. Peace, patience, and self-control. You want a filter to know if you've made a good decision? Did you have peace, patience, and self-control all along the way? If you lose your peace, if you're being impatient, if you're not controlling yourself in the midst of feeling a certain way, here's what you know. You've missed it. And people who miss it, it doesn't matter if it's right for other people. If it's wrong for you, it will lead to your ruin. Do we hear this? The apple was okay for Jesus to eat. It wasn't about Jesus, it was about Adam and Eve. In 1 Timothy 6:6-10, I am going to read this and then we'll pull it together. This is just a big one. So we've gone from Genesis all the way to the end of the New Testament, but this is the same type of thing. Can you discern in your own head when you are coveting and when your desires are healthy? Can you see the difference? Verse 6, actually, Paul says, godliness is just a source of great profit when it is combined with being happy with what you already have. Look, that's a great place to start. If you're going to make a decision about a person or a job or a big spend, whatever, are you content all along the way? Y'all notice when you buy milk, you don't get all anxious about that? You know why? Because it's okay, isn't it? Anybody get really anxious about getting gas? No, you don't. How come? Because there's nothing ungodly about that. There's no challenge in that. When you feel that little tug, because you're moving in a direction that little tug says, if you're making that out of discontentment, chances are you might be marching down the wrong path. We didn't bring anything into this world. We can't take anything out of it. We should be happy with just having food to eat and clothes to wear. Is that us? No way. No way. But people who are trying to get rich fall into temptation. They are trapped in many stupid and harmful passions. That is the word desires. Feelings. You can't trust your feelings. You have to control them. You have to do what's right when you don't feel what's right, knowing that if you do what's right, your feelings will ultimately follow with patience, with time, with self-control. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Here's the piece I want you to see. Some have wandered away from the faith and have impaled themselves with a lot of pain because they followed their desires, their passions, thinking money is going to fulfill their desires. Deep stuff. 4 tools for you. Go home and first and foremost, you want to make better decisions. You want to have the desires of your heart fulfilled, like for real. Seek God and His kingdom first. Always, always, always. Seek God first. Whatever your will is, Lord, I trust and I believe that that is what's best for me, and I will do that even though I don't want to. So many of you are tithing now. We've gone through the process of you saying, I just don't have enough money to tithe, and then, the church is just after my money, and then, maybe it is important for me to get my money right with God, and then you're like, I tithed last week and it felt really good, and then you tithe for a year and you're like, I don't see how I ever didn't tithe. It's a part of growing and maturing and realizing that if we don't live a certain way with our money, we become curmudgeons, we become misers, we become those people that we just don't enjoy being around because all they ever do is think about themselves. When you see something that God's will says that applies to your life and you don't want to do it, that is exactly where you have a blind spot and you need to do it. Devotionals, Sabbath holiness, serving the poor, tithing, forgiving, whatever it is. That's a great place to start. Always, always do what faith says. 2, have some time every day to develop self-awareness to know when your desires are unhealthy. That is what confession in your daily devotional prayer time is about, is to just think about, here are my desires for today. Here's where I'm planning on spending money. Here's where I'm planning on spending time. This is where my heart is focused. Okay. Do I have the humility, self-awareness to know when I'm off track with that stuff and be willing to say, no, that's not good. God, help me do better. Third, this is a big one for me, staring at that $2,000 sound bar. What are the other things that I could do with that money that might be good and faithful stewardship for the kingdom of God and even for my family? Oh, like, food for my kid. Not getting in debt so I don't have financial fights with my spouse. Anyway, is it good and faithful stewardship? If Jesus sat beside you and you're about to click that thing and Jesus would say, okay, get it, that's a good idea. Or would Jesus say, really? So, and I hear this a lot. You don't have money to give to the kingdom of God, but you can get that? You don't have money to serve the poor, to feed the poor, but you can get that? You don't have... Are you being a good and faithful steward of what God has blessed you with? Man, that is that'll just pull your thumb right back and be like, okay, Jesus, what do you want me to do with this? And here's the last one. Are you glorifying God all along the way? Jesus said, I came so you could have abundant life, and what that looks like is you connect to me, you follow my commandments, you bear fruit. What is fruit? Well, in this case, 3 of the fruits of the Spirit from Galatians 5:22. You have peace all along the way. 2, you have patience. Knowing that the good things in life are never easy or quick or microwavable. It takes time. And you have self-control. Self-control, knowing that your feelings will mislead you. Self-control says, I do what's right, and my feelings will catch up eventually. That's how this works. And you trust that when you follow the Lord's will, especially in the areas where you don't want to, when you delight yourself in the Lord, do y'all hear this? That's when the desires of your heart are filled. What does this look like? I want to give you one more. You're like, would you just shut up? I'm hungry. I will, I promise, but I want to give you this one. So many of our decisions are based off a fear of missing out. So we buy these things because we think we're missing out on some, if we don't buy this house, look what I'm missing out on. I can live in my own skin and be happy. We all need to take a deep breath and ask ourselves, what if I'm missing out on God's best by making this decision? What if I'm missing out on God's blessings on my life because I've made that decision? Do you want to be blessed by God? I'm asking, do you want to be blessed by God? Are you sure? Then don't do what God says don't do and then say, God, bless me anyway. That is not how this works. You follow the commandments of God, you do what God says, and God says, and I will give you the desires of your heart. What we do is we do whatever the desires of our heart say, and then we say, God, bless this anyway. And God's like, I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with that decision. And now we're going to have to clean up the mess you made by not doing what I asked in the first place. Can you discern the difference between healthy desires for healthy pleasures? God gave us the ability to desire. That's not a bad thing. But can you discern the difference when you have a desire for healthy things versus you have desires for unhealthy things? Desires for unhealthy things is covetousness, and it will ruin you. Thou shalt not covet, not because God is mean, but because God loves you, and He loves me, and He knows if we will desire the right things and follow the right path, that's when what we really want happens in our hearts and our homes. And we'll continue this next week. Lord, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your love, for your grace, for your presence in our lives, in our sanctuary here. And I pray for everyone here, those online too, that they absolutely would know that height and depth and width and breadth of your love, that we all would know your peace, which surpasses all comprehension. And Lord, that we would have your help and your strength to navigate this upcoming week, connected to you, listening to your voice, following where you lead, that the desires of our hearts might truly be satisfied through you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank y'all so much for coming today. Before you go, please shake somebody's hand and say, hey, glad y'all came, and we'll see you next Sunday.